one way that we might look at the tools that I'm going to talk about is teaching to yourself to be your own collaborator. So that's how I like to think about tools, is they give me options when I can't see the options. So I have 30 minutes to talk about 20 tools. And so that's actually, I emailed Mike my title, my thought. Yeah, thank you. And I thought, after I settled on that title, I thought, oh no, how am I going to do that? So forgive the rather perhaps a preschoolish way of thinking about these tools, but I decided I need a mechanism, an image that allows me to make sense of these tools, so I used hands. And the groups that we're going to talk about in terms of these tools today has to do with contrast. Contrast with melody. We have contrast with harmony, and contrast with lyric. Those are the pages that I've given here. And so let me just start again by kind of recapping some of the troubles that we all face. We feel inspired. That's a beautiful thing. We sit down, grab our instrument, grab our pen and paper, whatever it is, or we just start beatboxing and come up with something on the fly and sing it into our phone. And what happens then is we get really excited about these great ideas. I'm going to call that initial great idea your motif. You come up with a rhythmic bit that repeats. It's that rhythm that kind of is the fingerprint of the song. Or you have a hook, right? Like a title or a melodic theme that keeps recurring in the song. But whatever it is, you thought it was pretty good. Your instant assessment was, oh, that's cool, I should write that down. So step one, don't doubt what you thought initially. You thought it was good, it is good, stick with it. For me, the trouble is then the writing of the song. Oh God, it takes so long. And there's so many opportunities to do it wrong. You know what I'm saying? And so the next step in my mind, and again, this is where professional writers are, where you get there by writing a lot of songs, and they are fast. And so the next thing that I would encourage you to do to really apply these steps and start to feel yourself moving out of writer's block and into a more constant creative current would be to write faster. In order to write faster, you are going to need to accept mediocrity at times. And so that inner judge is going to be saying, I cannot say things like writing on the wall, or I can't talk about rain in a pop song again. All those things that are cliche, they're going to come, and you're going to say, that's nice of you to come. Let's move on. Fine, stay on my page. Let's move past those things. Because it's not that cliches or those ideas that are familiar are bad. They're not good, they're not bad. They're simply ideas that in context of the song are going to have a place or not have a place. But you're going to try to allow yourself to write faster. Okay, so let me tell you the main idea with today in my 27 minutes is I'm going to focus on this idea of knowing what you do so that you can determine how to contrast with that. And that's where this unique understanding what you do that is uniquely you comes in. So I mentioned the idea of a motif first because if you don't have a repeating melodic motif or a hook, a rhythmic idea, and so your song is just sort of a random litany of different rhythms, different pitches, different lyrical ideas that go on and on and on, you have got more like free-form, poetry or music that doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so the idea with I'm not going to say so much commercial music, as that carries a lot of baggage, I think, just memorable songs, you know. The idea is that we need to be more concise, precise with what we're trying to get the listener to understand. And so that hook, that in really commercial and memorable, instantly memorable music, you probably know it's repeated a lot, right? Say what you want to say, or say what you need to say what you need to say what you need to say, right? Oh, and over and over and over again. The verse of that John Mayer song is similarly repetitive. It's basically one melodic line that repeats and repeats and repeats. Sometimes there's a little variation, a little ending. But with highly commercialized songs, you need, and I'm on video saying this, 2 or 3 motifs, and that's it. Later on in the song, you can take variations on those motifs, you know, and give the listener a little something new to think about. But I think a lot of us try way too hard, right? We have to write something that's a really interesting melody and a great hook and use, you know, every borrowed chord we know and try to get it all to fit together. But I'm saying, don't make yourself work too hard. All right, so I'm going to start with melody. And so, like I said, know where you've been to know where you're going to go. The big idea with memorable songs is, first of all, we get a motif that after a verse, after the first 3 lines, you can sing it, right? It has a rhythm and it has a pitch. That's what melody is, a rhythm assigned to a pitch. How long am I going to hold it, and when am I going to sing it? Okay? So I've separated it into these 2 hands. Along the 5 fingers of pitch, there are 5 ways that you could describe where you've been. So let's say you start with verses or choruses when you're writing. You're going to look at that and you're going to say, well, how would I describe that? And I think the music theory in us says, okay, well, that's G, D, E flat, D, A, well, I don't know what this is anymore. So let's use normal language. And it's okay if you don't know music theory. I've written with a lot of people who don't read music, and they're hit songwriters. You don't need it to feel it. So just feel it and allow yourself to describe what you feel and what you hear. And to simplify this, and all the tools I'm talking about today are from the Berklee courses. And so they really, really work. And I find that I've used this throughout my career and been able now to kind of boil it down into these things that are important. One of the biggest tools that memorable songs use to know where we've been and where we're going to go is pitch. So on this pinky finger, we have lower or raise the pitch. So when you're at the end of your verse and you have a motif that you have repeated, you can say, well, what if I take the pitch up in the next section? Most songs, at least in our popular genre, use this device to create a new sounding section in the chorus, for example. Does that ring a bell, right? Easy technique, very natural feeling to do. If you continue, again, along the same lines of pitch level in your new section, you will not be creating contrast with pitch, which is okay. It does mean, however, that you might want to use some of these other devices to create this interest again for the listener in your song. All right, so the next tool, you can follow the roots of the chords that you've been playing, or you can avoid the roots of the chords that you've been playing. I don't know if you, and again, these are, notice what you do. If you look at that finger and you say, gosh, does my verse tend to sing, is the melody the roots of the chords? If you do that throughout the whole song, you're gonna get kind of a blocky, nursery rhymey, kind of heavy, simple feeling. And it might not be that satisfying to you. Maybe you didn't know why. Assess that, see if that's going on. It can be a cool tool if you mean to do it, though. Third thing would be change the shape of your melody. So that means You can ascend or descend. So let's say your melody was da 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 da. It's very much going down. Da 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 da. That was line 2. Da 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 da. That was line 3. Da 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 da. That was line 4. Verse is over. Now we've got the opportunity to ascend. Da 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 da. So that'll be my first notes of the new section. Sounds very different than it did before. I used, tones of the scale, a diatonic scale. You don't have to do that. It doesn't have to be so strict like that. But those counterpointal kind of movements are really helpful to notice if that's something you do often. Arcing up or arcing down, same idea. Might kind of go like that. So in your chorus, you might start high and go low. Very easy contrasting tool. Counter the bass movement. If the bass is doing something that's walking up, maybe your melody is going to do something that walks down. So again, just tools for thinking about how can I describe what I did so that I can do something different. Passing or chord tones. If in your verse you really dwelled a lot on non-chord tones, maybe in your chorus you're going to settle right in on a chord tone. You know what I'm saying? And that'll help to give those two sections contrast. All right. And then is it intervallic or clustered is on this thumb right here. So again, intervals would be the space between the notes, right? And you determine how big that space is or how small. With clustered melodies, there's very little space or no space at all. In a very intervallic melody, there's a lot of space between your melodies. So if you listen to your favorite 10 songs through some of these lenses, you will find all, or at least some of these tools are going on. The more tools you use at the same time, the more different your new section will sound. So it's up to you how different you want that to be. Cool? All right, so moving over to rhythm, I've got syncopated or straight. Ever wondered what he's doing, right? Da 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 da, super, super straight. Melody goes way up. I'm not going to try to sing like Pink does, but it stays actually quite straight in that song. The melody goes up and it's this huge interval thing. That would be this one more, but syncopated would be da 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 da, like off the beats. Da 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 da. So it's catching anticipations and things. That can be a really cool tool. Again, those are kind of opposites of each other, so you can use those to generate ideas. Making your notes longer or shorter. Huge popular technique for singers, especially in the chorus. You want to show off your voice. Long note, long high note, and you have a pop song, right? You have a single. Short notes in the verse, kind of understated. You can get more lyric story across that way. Long high notes, you can shine the light on. This is the big message, right? All right. And if you're writing for a singer who can't sing well, you might avoid that. All right. For all of you who want to write for other people. Phrasing position, before, on, or after. That means before the downbeat of the measure, after the downbeat of the measure, or on the downbeat of the measure. There's a really great song, at least from my past, Desiree. Desiree has a song, Listen as Your Day Unfolds, right, that one? And so it's on the downbeat in the verse, and that is the song. Da 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 da. That's how the verse goes. Just repeat, repeat, repeat. And then in the chorus, you gotta be strong, you gotta da da, you da 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 da. So there's two things happening there. The melody starts kind of, you gotta be, it's a pickup. So it kind of gets this energy into the chorus, where the verse was da 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 da. It was very solid and stable and just there. Now this song is a good example of this because it doesn't do anything like raise the pitch, just keeps it all in the same area for the verse and the chorus. But in the chorus, the phrases, the melodic phrases, get half as long, so they're 2 beats long. Whereas in the verse, it was a measure. Let me show you. Listen as your day unfolds. That was one measure of 4 counts, and that was one melodic motif. In the chorus, it's you gotta be, you gotta da 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 da. So she repeats faster. This is such a cool tool. Works beautifully. So if you're going to rely on rhythm to create your contrast and not pitch, that one is a great one to do. Is this landing with y'all? I feel I have to go very fast. Okay. All right. So that was, actually I did long and short phrases. I worked right into that from phrase position. Long and short phrases we did. More or less rest space. That's a big one. Again, we don't have to work so hard, you know. You don't have to talk and talk and talk and talk and have these really heavy lyric heavy sections. So if you notice that your verse has rather long lines and you are singing quite constantly, allow yourself some rest space. And you can do that by shortening your phrases and then not singing for a bar. Sing a short line or sing a long note. Long notes can do the same thing as rest space. So you're giving your listener time to take in what you've said, and rest space is such a great tool for that. That, in my mind, that is melody, and that's all there is. You can look at it from all of these different vantage points, but I hope that this is helpful for you to then glance back at and say, where have I been? If you can't figure out where you've been, then I think the question to ask is, do I have too many different hooks going on that it's simply not very memorable? Yeah? Okay, cool. So let's move on to the next page. Contrast with harmony. All right, so I've tried to make this into 5. So the first thing that we can do, and I had to list it here, though it's not really contrast, is using exact repetition of the harmony progression that you used in the verse. Use it again in the chorus, right? We hear this a lot in songs. That does mean that your harmonic progression, your chords, are not helping to make your chorus sound different than your verse. Songs that do this can rely on production techniques, arrangement ideas, to bring the chorus out. But if we're talking about just purely a song bones, skeleton of the song, really working, you could perform it acoustically, full band, whatever, and it still works, then I think there's something else going on, and it would be maybe a melodic thing that would be happening, or a rhythmic change, something going on. Okay, so we can do that. That's an option. But you have to look somewhere else for contrast. The other thing we can do is add a new chord or chords in the new section. And I play guitar like a songwriter, so forgive me for that, but it's good. Sometimes I think not playing well, it forces me to write better, And so if you're gonna add a new chord, if you do it early in the section, then we know, okay, this is the start of that section. If you do it late, we don't know that that section began until that new chord comes. So this is the verse. Go somewhere new. Right? So that was the new section. Okay? Allow yourself to go somewhere new. The other thing that we can do is change chords more frequently. And so again, you have to know where you've been. And if you, a great thing to do would be to transcribe some of your favorite songs and just see where they go. If you don't know the names of the chords, then put a mark next to how long those chords stay. Hear where the chord changes, because that's a really big harmonic tool. You don't have to rely on what chord, You know, there's so much emphasis on that. Play a great chord, but it's how often, many times. So I actually did that by accident. 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first chord is a whole measure of 6/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in the new section, I'm going to change. 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. See, it changed faster. And then I could do it faster. I don't have to stay in that place, right? I can take it down again, then back to the verse. Yeah? So you can think about movement like that in terms of how frequently am I changing. I didn't play any crazy chords. I don't even know crazy chords. I use a lot of, some borrowed chords and things like that. Flat 3s, flat 6, flat 7s are really cool if you're into music theory. Cool cadences. But that, again, that would be what chords you're going to. If you're interested in knowing more about that, kind of from a songwriting perspective, I have a chapter in this book that's on theory for songwriters. And I thought that was important because I feel like music theory is sometimes more difficult, challenging, intricate than it needs to be if you're going to learn theory sort of as you write and learn to apply it to your writing. And so there's a list of common cadences that we hear in songs and common borrowed chords, like a major 2 chord in place of a minor 2 chord. You know, things like that that you can start to involve just one at a time in a song you write. And then you can train your ear to get used to hearing those substitutions. Okay, so more frequently. And then I had changing less frequently, which really, it's just the opposite. If you move a lot in your verse section, try letting your chorus chord changes draw out. Maybe you're going to change half as frequently as you did. Yeah? Simple technique. And then rearrange the chords. Very cool technique. So if you play G to D to C, then start on D and go to C and go to G. So try rearranging them. And again, it's just a little contrast goes a very, very long way. Okay. All right. Then I'd like to talk about the last one, which is contrasting with lyric. This was a hard one for me because there's so much to talk about here that I feel needs more explanation. But I will try. Okay, so some of these things, when we write lyric first, we actually are implying many times what the melody is doing because we are ascribing rhythms to the melody, right? It's a pain because sometimes the lyric just does not want to fit in that melodic position or we find ourselves constricted. But it's a good thing to remember that you're implying a melodic rhythm because you can control those things when you're writing lyric. All right, so we can do things like make our lines longer or shorter. And when it comes to what does that look like on the page when you're writing a song, it could mean that in the verse, you have a very long line, like sitting at the bus stop, staring at the ground. Maybe that's the first long line. And then you've got lines to match that are similarly long. In the chorus, if I continue that, my melody has to continue to involve short notes, probably, if I'm going to keep, getting the song to go forward. And that can be kind of, you can kind of shoot yourself in the foot that way. Then it's hard, you're making it harder to create contrast. So you can think about these things if you write lyric first. You can say, okay, now I need some short lines, and I wait, rest, 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 and I wait, rest, 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 for you to come home, 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 and I wait, and I wait. Now I have all the opportunity in the world to use long notes, to start later in the measure if I want to start the chorus after the downbeat now, to use rest space. So you're giving yourself more opportunity to use melodic contrast. And that's what's really valuable with thinking about those things with lyric first. Okay. So another one is to use exact or internal repetition. I just did that when I said, and I wait, and I wait. So it's exact repetition, you know? Internal repetition is when we repeat the inside of a line. You'll hear choruses, even verses do this a lot. But, you know, and I'm free, free falling. Yeah, I'm free, free falling. So if you don't use a lot of exact repetition or internal repetition, particularly in your chorus, ask yourself why, you know? Maybe that's just not your style, and that's okay. However, keep in mind that you're asking your listener to listen to more and more and more information. And a song is different than a conversation, you know, or a book where we're just delivering and delivering. We need to allow the listener to hear the main message. So there again, when you get to the chorus, we're expecting you to tell us what the main message is. One of the things that I often do when I write is when I feel stuck, I go online and I read lyrics to some of my favorite songs. The first thing I realize is, oh, that wasn't all that good. Second thing I mean good as in, that wasn't that difficult. Why am I making this so hard? The second thing is, oh my gosh, that lyric is so much repetition. Or that lyric is really short, it's condensed. My song is already twice as long as that and I'm halfway through, you know? So you don't need to deliver so much. So you go in and you say, okay, if I had to cut half of this chorus or half of this verse, what's really important for me to say? What phrase can I repeat instead? Just by saying, I'm going to give this a try for the next 30 seconds, I'm going to use repetition, I'm going to cut 50% and just see what happens. And I can throw it away and no one will ever see it if I hate it. But many times, just by saying it out loud with repetition, you'll think, oh gosh, that's so much more powerful. I have narrowed it down to the meat and at least taken a stab at it, right? And the repetition shines all the light on that one idea. All right, very helpful technique. The next one I said was abstract metaphorical or direct conversational. I talk about this a lot in my course on Berklee Online called Commercial Songwriting Techniques. There's two kinds of language that I like to look at. There's degrees to which language or lyric lines fit into these types. But in a sense, I like to look at it as these two. There's direct conversational, which is literal, and it's concrete, and it often provokes an image. So it would be a line like sitting at the bus stop. You know, it is what it is. There's no other way to interpret that. Then there's this other kind of language, which is abstract, metaphorical, or it is kind of abstract. And so the idea is that this language summarizes. It's big thought language and typically found in choruses. So your more language that is seen or image-provoking is going to fall into the verses typically. Language that is more abstract, metaphorical generally falls in the chorus. So you can use some of these ideas. And that's also the topic of this book, is using and learning to use those two types of language effectively. All right. The last two, past, present, or future tense. It might be helpful to look at songs that you really enjoy and look in and see how do they use when the song is happening, whether it's going on in the moment right now, or and setting a scene, or is it kind of happening anytime, anywhere? And again, that's kind of wrapped into this abstract metaphorical versus image-provoking kind of lyric, but both are needed oftentimes for effective songs. But checking out your tense, making sure it stays consistent, basically that the lyric reads like a story, like a conversation would, and that you're not just giving us fragments of phrases without conjunctions and prepositions or pronouns to connect the lines. Sometimes it's difficult. to digest a lyric meaning if it's just bits and pieces and we can't really make sense of it. And then the last thing would be points of view, using I, you, he, she, and we. Sometimes you can move between those in a verse and a chorus, or different sections of the song to make that more powerful and for contrast.